In this episode, Bruno finds a bargain, heat damaged finish, baked on oil, cosmoline, scrapers are the word of the day. Don't screw the wood up and you won't have a whole lot of sanding to do. Oil finished goodness. Contain that spring force. The lights in your shop will appreciate it. Look at that bluing. Remington used to build a beautiful gun. A Remington Model 81. Wow. And I'm going to tell you what, it's a beautiful rifle, but it hasn't ever had any maintenance done to it. And judging from the fact that none of the screws in this thing are screwed up, I'd be willing to bet you that this probably hasn't been taken apart since it was made right after World War II. Bruno is telling me that there are some cosmetic differences, pistol grip stocks, things like that, but this 81's got some issues. And we're going to talk about more stock work because this thing has a stock failure that's common that I want to show you about, and just the intense Glock loading. Deep dive into a gun that will hurt you more taking it apart than if you shoot it. Let's go down a rabbit hole, guys. This is a deep one, and off we go. Sometimes it doesn't matter how good your metal maintenance is if you keep this thing in an area that's hot. This stock has gotten hot, and you can see where this finish has just died. It crinkled up. I have a couple of theories about this. One is that the finish moves and the wood doesn't. And another theory that holds on those polyurethane Japanese Browning guns is that the wood moves and the finish doesn't. Either way, this is all going to have to go. This particular gun actually belongs to Bruno, and he was able to buy this gun as an extremely good deal because, in the words of the immortal Bruno, he knew a guy. Now, the metal on this gun has got some kind of sticky-looking Glock all over it. Good God, look at this. We were scrubbing a little bit of this off before. The bolt, all of this black stuff here is not the bolt. All of that black stuff is dried on, I don't know, lubricant. So there's two things that are going to happen to this. One's going to be the full conversion where we're going to go through and boil this action in water and get down to what I'm going to tell you was a stunning finish underneath it. And I don't know if this camera is even doing this finish justice. There's no rust on this gun. This thing is going to be stunning. And having said that, I'm going to tell you this. That right there doesn't feel like dirt. Anyway, clean this up. We'll strip this wood down. Now we're going to see all the things that we did in the 03 and the 98K episode are now going to come in, and we're going to apply these to a stock that we want to close the pores. We want to make it look good. We don't have any military cartouches. This is just a straight up in off the street save. Bruno walked in here today and said, man, I got this gun for 25% of what it's worth because it was in terrible condition. Let's go prove someone otherwise. A buck in books saves $1,000 in stupid. A university professor friend of mine, Henri, said that. I keep old Gun Parts Corp catalogs. I keep all kinds of stuff because even though what's in them doesn't mean anything, right there. See that? Remington Model 8 and Model 81. Now this book isn't telling us much. This book is telling us that, you know, there are parts in it. Wow, look at that. That kind of looks the same. That's really incredibly cool. Well, there we go. Another book. Well, look at that. That's showing us, well, there's some components that I recognize. We'll get that out of here. Yeah, there's some components that I recognize. Look at that. That's crazy. Wow, that's even our trigger group. Who knew? Okay, well, this book isn't quite getting it. This is an old Jack First catalog, and I'm going to tell you what, when you run out of options, Go look at Jack first. They've moved, they've upscaled, they've downscaled, they've done a lot of things, but they still are very, very good at what they do. This particular Jack First catalog that I have is, God, it's got to be 30 freaking years old. So don't look at any of the prices in it. Don't quote them on it. But this has more, but it's not enough. Now, I've had this book out before, and this is my, well, it's not Gunsmith's Data. This is a book that Brownell's put out a long time ago, and it's been reprinted and reprinted and reprinted, and I've scabbed through it and all kinds of stuff. And in this particular book, there's a chapter on the Remington Model 81. Now we're getting somewhere, because not only do we have the rifle and all the parts laid out, we also have how to disassemble. This is where the grand and wisdom is laying right here, because I'm going to tell you what, this gun, if not respected, will jump off this table and bite you in the ass. This is what we would really like the stock on this gun to look like. We'd like it to be nice and smooth. We'd like it to be oil finished. We would like it to do a lot of things. I started in on this a little bit early in order to get it to a point where it doesn't look like this. There you go. So this is what this stock looks like after it came out of, I don't know, but it was subjected to a lot of heat. You can see where the finish is crinkled. Like right there, you can see the crinkling in it. So the things we investigated with the 03 Springfield and with the with that 98K was the use of a scraper. Now, there are a lot of people that are going to swear that the way to take the old finish off a gun is to just use chemicals, caustics, sandpaper, and yet I would have to tell you that with a nice sharp scraper, that's bare walnut starting to show right there. Let's see if we can get a good picture of it. There it is. That's walnut, and that's actually smooth. We won't have to go much below about a 150 grit to get after that. Let me get the light better. Here we go. There's the light. Now, for a quick tutorial on sharpening these scrapers, I did something called sanding explained. There's a little video. I'll see if we can include something here for it. But what the scraper is it has a very slight burr that's been rolled right up here on the edge. And it does a really great job. Now, there's been a lot of people talking about, well, I use glass. Okay, that's good. You can use glass, except that I can flex this scraper ever so slightly in both directions to get it to do what I want to do. There are also multiple ways that you can put this edge on. You can have no edge at all, which is what the glass has. It just comes up to a 90-degree point there. But in this particular case, I have this thing the burr isn't like that. The burr on this one is up like this with a slight hook. And that's just all in how you use your burnishing tool. So I can change the angle of this to get what I want. I can cut on the push. The real issue I have with caustics is, right now, this wood, the pores are actually still closed on it. We can sand this wood down, and it'll actually not look too bad, and it will not require a whole lot of absorption on the part of your oils. This is some 150 sandpaper here, and this is about all I'm going to use. All right. Now we're going to do the whole stock, but what I'm trying to tell you is that I've said before that the best way to not screw something like this up is to just not screw it up in the first place. And I mean, that's about all the more sanding I'm going to give that. We can just take a little bit of water here. And that's what the wood's going to look like if we finished it blonde. And there it is. There's no sanding streaks in it. There's nothing. And I mean, that's how fast you can prep one of these things. You'll note I have this mounted on my checkering cradle, and in the back here I have a screw that is just a regular Phillips screw like I've done before, because I want to have the butt plate on this thing. You can see that shiny line. I want the butt plate on this while I'm doing this work, because I don't want to run the risk of rolling edge over in the back. Keep moving from different parts of the stock to other parts of the stock, because you don't want to focus on one little area and then you wind up with a divot here. You're taking the finish off the entire stock, not off of several small pieces at once. Be mindful to keep sharp edges sharp. Don't roll over. That's what I was talking about back in the butt plate area. You don't want to roll over this. So just keep your P's and Q's about you. This is what a piece of glass will not allow you to do. It will not allow you to come up inside these curved areas and peel up underneath this thumb part, this thumb piece. Go slow and take your time and you'll be fine. What we are really trying to make sure we don't do is roll up over this edge with the sharp edge that way, and you'll wind up a little cut right there, and we don't want to do that. You'll figure it out when you get there. Now, did you see what I just did? I rolled that up, and I just told you to not do that. Now, I'll fix it, but don't do that. Now I'm going to blame that on not being able to get my hands in front of the camera, and we'll just, that's my story and I'm sticking to it there. There we go. I got one more tool I'm going to have to get a little bit further up in here. Now, you can use a file. This is an extremely smooth chain file. And you can work this off. You got to keep moving, and you got to make sure you don't want to stop. And then that removes that smut from up inside here. Huh. Something I want to note here. This edge on the top is sharp and it has a delineation to it. You can see that shadow going underneath it. This edge is just a smooth rollout. This isn't a delineated edge here, so this comes up and then rolls straight out right there. More on cross-lighting stuff when you're looking at it as we get this thing down naked and we start having to sand it. And so far, we're not moving any wood. We're moving this powdery stuff, and this is just the old finish coming off. We haven't really moved any wood yet. We haven't changed any contours. We haven't ruined any edges. You gotta be real careful on these sharp edges. And you can tell when a gun's been refinished, like back in the 50s, and the thing will just, every single edge on a gun will be round. I've got one in here that looks like it had been sanded with a grinding wheel. I'll show you. It's smooth, it's beautiful. The finish is 1/4 of an inch thick, but really, really well executed crap. So I was asked the question, how thick? Well, this is about 30-something thousand inches thick, but the most important part is that it's spring. It can be flexed so that you can flex it with your hand. When I'm pushing down with my thumb here, there's a slight flex to it. And you'll know if you're going the wrong way. The wood will tell you if you're going the wrong way, but right now we're not moving any wood. We're just getting small pieces of finish off. Now this stuff is as hard as a rock right here. Get it refocused. There we go. So you can cheat. You see it's starting to melt. It's bubbling up. This is what happened in that attic. It just got so hot it bubbled up. So we're just going to go ahead and finish the job here. And get this all to crinkle. Now let's add another couple of years here. And we'll let that really bake, and it makes all that finished. Look at that. It's got direction to it and grain. Look at that. Yikes. There we go. Starting to look better. Just like when we did the 03 stock, just take your time. You're not in a hurry here. Especially if you're only doing one of these things. Learn what you need to learn. Learn how to sharpen a scraper. Practice on something that's not Great Uncle Lumpty Fratz's Browning, and go from there. Ordinarily, if you're prepping this stock and there's a checkering field right here, you don't have to get stupid with how you strip it. You're just going to checker over it anyway. But in this case, this gun came without checkering, and it's going to leave that way. Unless Bruno tells me to checker it, which I don't know. We'll see what he says. But for right now, I'm actually filming this myself with the complete autonomy here. I'm the only guy in the shop. Josh is here, but he doesn't know anything more about filming than I do. So we're just going to kind of grope our way through it. Get that good and bubbled up there. Now I'm getting away with going cross grain here because I'm not moving a lot of wood. If I was starting to move wood and I was cutting like that, we would be in a bad place because we'd start putting scratches in the wood that would have to be sanded out. That would bring this below flush, and then it would look like somebody was here. And the real pro can get in and get out, and you never knew he was there, and that's the trick. So as long as I'm just making dust, you can get away with that. That last little camera bump will give you some idea how close I have this camera. The camera lens is like physically like right here. So bear with me. All right, there we go. So what are we witnessing here? We're looking at the fact that this is actually a depression. So sometime in this gun's life, this wood is shrunk, and the center of this is either sunk down or the machine that they cut it on put a slight concavity there. And the way to get through that in my world is to just keep cutting. And I'm putting a very slight flex on the blade by pushing down with my index finger. And just see if I can get into the middle of this here. And letting the outside of the grip level up, which should have been done in the first place. Okay, we're going to crystallize this stuff. Yeah, that was a puff of smoke you saw come off of that. I got that a tad bit too hot, but it also allowed us to come through here. Resist the temptation to roll this off. This edge needs to be not sharp. It's kind of like an eighth note. It's not held, but it's still an eighth note. So you have to be able to, if this is sharp, its surface area will go to infinity, and therefore, I'm sorry, any pressure applied to an infinitely small area gives you infinite pressure. So you need just enough area on this. We want to what's called break the edge, but you don't want to round it off. By breaking the edge, finish will stick all the way around the corner. Your stain will stick around and it'll look good, but it won't look like somebody just went after it with a piece of sandpaper. All right, believe it or not, we have just stripped the finish completely off of a Remington Model 81. Oh, I'm sorry, I got a little bit left right there. I spoke too soon. Anyway, back with the sandpaper. So I went and got a tub of water here. It's got a rag in it. And we'll need that rag here in a little bit. So this is where having the butt plate on the stock while you're sanding it really keeps you from making the back end look bad. Now, am I going to scuff this pad up? Yeah. I'll buff it down with a little bit of 600 or 800 grit sandpaper And we'll just roll on a little bit of rust blue, let it rust up a little bit, run it through with the rest of the parts, and not a problem. You don't have to have it on this rotisserie. You don't. I prefer it just because I find that it gives me two hands to sand with instead of one for the rigging and one for the ship. That's a Navy saying, guys. I don't know if you picked up on that. Now, because we removed this finish with a scraper, we don't have very many, if any, longitudinal scrape lines. And this is a basic but decent piece of wood. Yeah, that's not too bad. All right, as opposed to, say, we haven't even sanded over here yet at all. But come and get all this equally wet. There are a lot of people tell you, use a bare minimum amount of water. Yeah. Well, guess what? The good Lord doesn't rain on this thing with a bare minimum amount of rain. You better use what you got to use and find out whether or not the grain's going to stand up or not. Let me pull these lights back on here. Very good. All right. This is not a hair dryer. This is an industrial heat gun. If you stay in one spot on this stock long enough, it will turn darker. It'll burn it. So I can see a little bit of oil right here. Maybe a little bit more sanding to do, but not much. So let's get this water dried off this thing. The act of doing that raises the grain, and you'll feel it. It feels fuzzy. And we're just going to keep cutting that fuzz off until it stops feeling that way. Now, the other thing I want you to see is this. Even though we cut all of that finish off the top, this is dried on finish and oil that have been getting together and filling up the pores of my sandpaper. And since this is such an economical evolution on sandpaper, just get another piece when it gets too bad. That stuff will start leaving streaks. So just pick up another piece, felt pad. You could do it with a piece of wood if you really wanted to, but just don't do a Scottish fold. Don't do a fold, and then go after this by hand. It'll just have all these little roller coaster style undulations all over them. And after 2 or 3 of those whiskerings, which is what that's called when you take that towel to it, this thing will stop raising grain as we go. Now, as you roll over these things up here, and I know I'm not focused up there, but as you roll over this, make sure you don't make dents. You don't want to roll the edges over. You want to leave it sharp. This is what, 7? I don't know. I've lost track. I've lost count. That's one of the other reasons why you have Bruno run your camera, so he can keep up with all this crap. Because I got a low battery warning light here. I've got chargers flashing at me. I've got all kinds of stuff. Doing the work and filming it is virtually impossible, and this is why I have Bruno helping me. He keeps track of all of that detail. Like, did I just film for 5 minutes and get anything? He knows what take we're on. He has to line the audio up with the video. So I'm also wearing a lavalier, which has a chip in it. And then he's got to keep track of where all that video winds up in that machine. and then smash it all together in our editing program. We use Premiere Pro, and we use a separate lavalier with a mic that we are constantly fighting with the fact that my vocal intonations bounce all over the place. So he has to level all that audio out, and there's a lot of work that goes into this that isn't me sanding this stock. So in order for you guys to be able to watch this, you got to remember that Bruno's got to kill 2 days, sometimes 3. In this case, this episode's going to shoot through 4 days, because we got to wait for the oil to set up so you can see the end here. That's a lot of effort on the man's part, so it's not all what I'm doing. A lot of it's what he's doing too. All right, we're getting close here. And that's going to leave the last part that I want to pay some attention to, which is this dipsy doodle right here. And I mean, this is a dip. I want to see if I can get that cross-lit as that comes across. There's a divot right there. It's bad enough that I messed it up with the scraper, so I'm going to have to pay the piper here and scrub through this. Okay, I didn't mess that up too bad. Those cross-grain scratches are coming right out, and some of them actually look like they're in the wood. Yeah, those aren't scratches. That's actually like curl. Okay, that's cool. That's good. I just want to make sure I'm not the guy to cause that. Again, we're not rounding this edge over. We are just breaking it. Same thing up here. You don't want this sharp. It's not sharp. I don't know. I still remember my piano teacher beating 8 notes into me. They are not held. Okay. All right, we're getting there. Okay, I'm coming to the conclusion that the wood on this side isn't stained. That's just the color of the wood. That's green popping up. This is all smooth here. I believe that that's not oil. I think that's actually grain in the wood showing there. And we'll see here. All right, we missed a little spot up there. All right, I've been asked a lot about what my issues are with lens speed, and I have no problem with lens speed. I just haven't made friends with it because I typically don't have the time to wait on it, or I choose to not have the time to wait on it. It's just me. I don't have a problem with the product, who made it. I just haven't made friends with it yet, and I've said that before, and I'll probably wind up saying it again. All right, we got a little spot right there that just needs to be resanded. So let's get this thing dry one last time. Let's get some oil on this thing. Yes, smoother than a baby's backside. Nice. Give her a nice final touch up there. Okay. I've had to finish this thing alone in the shop because we mixed this mixture of Vanderheef Formula 13, that military red, the brown, and then the black. I mixed all this up because we started filming this thing about 4 days ago, and then we got separated. Bruno and I got separated, and he's off doing very important things right now. And the problem I was having is this oil will hold for a while. It will hold. It'll stay open for 3, 4, 5 days. But we're getting near the point where I needed to get some oil on this stock just to get the base color established. And then Bruno and I can get back to shooting video again. In fact, as it sits, this Anvil's going to hold some kind of record because it's going to have taken us a week and a half to film it. So you just got to do what you got to do. And I got on about doing it. All right, so now the oil's going on. And I'm running out of it. I'll get about 2 coats of this on. And what we're doing is we're brushing it on and we're allowing it to absorb. This really isn't a coat, it's an application. And we're just going to let it soak in as well as it can. And then we'll come back in about 15 minutes or so. And we'll rub it in with our hands. And let's see here, we get those off. Chip brush, this is like a 55 or 60 cent, I don't know what they cost. But use these chip brushes for this kind of stuff, especially when you're doing applications, because they're cheap and you can throw them in a garbage can and you can get them at any hardware store. I got a message from a guy that sent away for a toilet bowl ring, and I don't know where he lives, but they don't use them in his country. So he sent to the United States for a Chinese-made toilet bowl ring to have it sent back to his country. And the whole point about using the toilet wax was that it was cheap and quick and you could get it. And this poor guy, God, he probably spent $100 putting something on when he could have just got some beeswax from the local apiary. So I want you guys to understand the whole drive behind what we're doing here is that it can be done, and it can be done with locally sourced materials, and then it can be done correctly that way. And what you're going to sacrifice is a little bit of time is what's going to happen. All right, we're going to let this set, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Once it sets, I'll put a little bit more on. So the oil's been on here now for a couple minutes soaking in, and we're going to come back to what we're looking at here. And you say, yeah, this is browner. This piece of wood is browner. It won't be when we get all this stuff mopped off the top. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So once you're not looking through that stain, you can see that the colors are going to roll out about the same here. Now this thing is 3 coats of oil and 2 buff outs with the Scotch-Brite pad, a really non-aggressive Scotch-Brite pad ahead of this. This will now catch up and the 2 guns will be in the same spot when we're all done. It'll have about 5, maybe 6 coats of oil on it. We'll buff it down, it'll look correct, and most importantly, if it gets dinged in the field, it's really easy to repair. This has 3 of the ons with the oil. Let the oil, rub it off, let it oxidize, another application of oil. I'm getting down to the point now where it's about time to rub this thing out. This is just an ordinary piece of steel wool. You don't have to worry about degreasing it, because if there's oil in a wool, guess what? We just put oil on the stock and you just come in and you rub it down until it gets this nice sheen. And you can see, now you can get crazy with this. You can do what the London guys do. When there are 20, 30 layers of oil, rub outs, buffings, rotten stone, and that's great because they're doing weapons that people are paying that much money for. In our particular case, It's a field gun, so after about 5 or 6 applications, you're just kind of wasting your time. But anyway, there you go. That's it. Now this would be fine like this. We will wax it probably before we send it out in the weather, and it'll look great. Well, that was nice, but we're going to take this out of here and just let it sit in the cradle. It doesn't need to go anywhere. Yeah, right there. Look at that. That receiver is nuts. How nice that came out. This is what was hiding underneath all of that baked on gack. Look at that. That's nice. Now this hasn't been oiled. It's just got a little bit of kerosene on it. And then we do a before of this. And then what it looked like now that it's done. All we did was a straight up conversion, boiled it in a little bit of dihydrogen monoxide, and then rubbed it all off. Conversion 101, I've got an entire tab full of how to do that. A question I've been asked a lot is how do I card the inside of this? We've carded the outside of it. We can just card it with a toothbrush. I mean, you just go in here and scrub it off. It's not that hard. You can take all this stuff in here that's been, look at all that orange stuff, and you just go in there and scrub it out with a toothbrush. You can then go in and oil it with a set of oiled toothbrushes, and it'll look just great. So that's how you get off the inside. And then the inside of the bore, of course, you just take a regular old bore brush and scrub it out. So I saw something while we were putting this back together again, is someone attempted to help this screw out. And what they tried to do was take the mainspring out before the gun was out of the stock, and it mauled the head up. So don't just go in here with a file. Some of you that have been watching me for a while have seen me do this before. Polish 2-ounce ball peen, and we're just going to beat all of this excess metal back where it belongs. So now I've pounded all that proud metal back to where it belongs, and then we take it and we turn it on its side like this, and we just tap it so that we knock those edges back in, and then we put it back in the hole. For those of you that are wondering, this is a jeweler's bench block. This particular one was made in the 1950s. You don't need a jeweler's bench block. I just happen to have one. They're handy pieces of kit, but they're collector's items. So we'll just take the hacksaw here and just clean that slot up ever so slightly. Well, that's all we're doing is just knocking the sides off what's in there. We're not removing a lot of metal. We're just using the saw as a single row file. Okay. And then we'll pop this out and we'll stick it in a drill. So I'm not looking in the monitor right now, so I'm thinking, okay, we're going to just chuck it in this drill. Oops, wrong way. Just going to chuck it in a drill like that, and then take a file. This is a piece of 320 grit sandpaper. Nothing fancy, just I don't know how well that's showing up. Yeah, focus on that screw head. There you go. So now that screw head doesn't have any mangled edges on it. And it's a lot cleaner. And you can cold blue this. You can heat it up with a torch and turn it blue. Do a lot of things. I'm going to heat it up with a torch and turn it blue and dunk it in a little bit of oil. Done it before thousands of times. Just take care of your screws. But the first thing you reach for is not your file. The first thing you reach for is your hammer. So here's that screw now mounted back in the gun, and it looks a lot better. Somebody mistook that screw that holds in the mainspring for the screw that holds the action in, couldn't get it out, mauled it, and quit. And that's all much further they got it apart. So now we've got the entire gun put back, pretty much all the sub-assemblies redone, and we used our photographs to help us get through that. The stock is done and has been polished. The foreend's done and has been polished out. You can put some wax over this, and it really doesn't matter. There's something I did want to say here. It doesn't matter if you use oil, if you use linseed, if you use true oil, if you use polyurethane, it doesn't matter. The wood prep is all the same, and that's where you're heading from. So anyway, this thing is beautiful. Let me tack this thing back together again. The fire control group mounts up in the bottom. You got a screw that goes through there, a pin that holds it in there, and then that screw goes up, and then the rest of it just screws back together again. No big deal. In the beginning of this, I talked about the fact that there was a large spring in here, and here it is, right here. And that spring right there is the same spring that you find on an A5. The A5 has a pretty epic recoil spring that's located down here. This recoil spring on this thing is up inside the jacket, and we need to release that energy in such a way that it isn't going to hurt us. So now, in the interest of full disclosure, I've already had this thing apart. It's been converted, and all of the gack was boiled off of it. And I'm going to tell you what, we didn't just spin this ring off when it got here, because this thing looked like, see what I'm talking about? So we know that this is loose. We can pull back here. We know that this is loose and can be taken off now. So what we're going to do is we are going to actually take this off. And if you have to, you can pull back and just put a piece of flat stock in there and spin this off. Okay, so I'm reaching in front of the camera here, but let me go ahead and get this off here. It's still tough, and it's been lubricated. All right, there we go. It's not going to explode on you. This is going to pop out because this inner ring here, this is the barrel, and this ring is threaded to the barrel, and then there's a washer that won't fit over it, pushing forward on the barrel group. So you take the bushing out first and just get it out of the way. Now, in order to control all this energy, we're going to slide a rod down the barrel like that. And what that rod does, you can put a couple of washers, a couple of nuts. This is a 1/4 rod. I think in metric, this would work out to about a 6mm rod. Take a 6mm rod, throw it down there, or whatever your caliber is. This is a 30 caliber weapon, so it's 7.62, so a 6mm rod's going to fit. What we want, though, is that when this spring explodes, we want this whole stack to wind up on this rod and not kinked in half. So to get this off, there's a hole located in it right there. And you take the cheesiest looking spanner you can possibly scab together for a video, and you'll hook it in that hole right there, and that gives you enough leverage to begin turning this. Now this is where you got to capture this thing. I'm going to put my hand back here like this, and I'm just going to spin it off. Okay. Now that banging you're hearing, the washer is corrugated on the front, and this collar is corrugated on the back, so it's doing this kind of deal like a set of gears. So you can hear it knocking. Now you see my left hand back there, I'm turning the barrel off, but eventually all this spring pressure is going to come out of here. You see that collar backing out there? That's what the spring is pushing up against. Eventually that's just going to go bang. There we go. That's how you uncork that, not blow it all over the room. There is a keyway on the top of the barrel here. You can actually see this keyway located right here. And the top of this washer, I don't even know if I'll get it back into view here, hang on. This washer has a key in it right there. There's a key right there. Where the hell? I had it, there it is. There it is, right there, right above my thumb. You see that little tit? So that has to actually get compressed down onto the end of the barrel, onto the keyway. So to go back together again with this pig, you get all of this mess in here, and you can just push this down. You see, and then the spring doesn't kink and fly all over the place. You find that little keyway, you get that up there on the top, and you put this so that it pops down on the keyway like that. And then you're holding it with the palm of your hand like this, and you can just begin to thread it on, and now it's trapped. And now you can take this thing out of here. Oh my God, he put a threaded rod down the barrel. He's gonna ruin the crown. Give me a break. You guys are shooting steel jacketed ammo. And I'm not talking about steel case, I'm talking about steel jacketed ammo. You're not gonna hurt this barrel if you're just gentle enough with it. Okay, so So this goes all the way down. See the end of the barrel starting to stick out now? This will come down until it stops. We can put our super cheese looking wrench on this and just give it a little bit of a scrunch. That's it, it's done. And then this is now all captured. So this can just very gently thread in, and be careful because there's a lot of threads per inch, and high thread per inch count means you can cross it. And I'll tell you something, screws do not cross on the way out. They get crossed on the way in. We'll give this a touch of oil while we're putting it back together again, because this is my final assembly here. We'll give it a touch of oil. We've oiled everything else on the inside, but this is the one thing I want to show you, and it scares people about Model 8s, and it should scare them, because there's a lot of energy back there. A lot of energy. Of course, now I've oiled it, and my fingers are wet. So you get to the end there, you can pop the barrel through and then just give it a turn and be gentle. Make sure you're pushing in so that you don't wind up scabbing up the metal everywhere. And you don't have to kill this thing. You just run it down until it touches off. And that, my friends, is how you do that. I'm going to do a little ersatz pen action here. I'm going to cut the camera loose. And what I want to show you guys is, this is what's possible with a little bit of scraping and a little bit of time. We've got what was underneath this all cleaned off. You can even read the word safe. It's not bad. I think it came out right, and we're getting this knack of being able to understand what they look like. So yeah, I think it came out great. I think it came out great. Now we're still working the ammo problem on this. This is in essentially a rimless 30-30. We're working the ammo problem. So we've got nothing to shoot it with. So everybody's gonna get all uptight about that. You guys keep asking me, well, when's part 2 when you shoot it? By the time we get back together again and film, this gun's gonna be on the other side of out of here for about 3 weeks. So, and sometimes when I'm dropping these older anvils in here as we're redoing them, we'll have shot some of those anvils 2.5 years ago, so I don't still have the gun. But in the meantime, this will get shot. Maybe we'll get you some footage of it, but we've got to solve a pretty deep ammo problem. But with sexy like this, and you bet we're gonna go ahead and find some ammo for it and run it. So let's transition from safe to unsafe. A lot of guys would say that I lit that cigar the wrong way and improperly. They don't know how to overhaul a Model 81. The Remington Model 81. And I'm going to tell you what, this thing is a thing of beauty, and it's been a pleasure to kind of tear it down and show you guys what's possible with scraping and refinishing techniques that I have several videos out on, and I just want to let you guys know that you can do it. Be gentle. Take your time and join me at the bottom of the rabbit hole. And as always, it's been a distinct pleasure to help you guys to grab a tool and start screwing up.